In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome back. Welcome. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast. And I am thrilled to be able to go over a huge, big deal that's coming up on us like a freight train. That's the Real ID Act. So we're going to go over facts and fiction about what the ID Act. So when we come back, we're going to drop right into a complete review of what the Real ID Act and what we're able to workarounds that exist. I'll show you some of my own stories. So when we come back, we'll take off. So I'll see you in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Merrill Chandler here. This is the Get Fundable podcast. And today we're talking about the Real ID Act. So first and foremost, the Real ID Act has had it's been a long time in coming. I mean, literally since the Patriot Act after the 9/11 tragedy, everybody wanted to be able to have a single trustworthy identification. Well, that never happened, and the Real ID Act isn't even there's still workarounds around this. So let's go through each one of the things that we're talking about and kind of do a deep dive into what the Real ID Act is about. First of all, the Real ID Act is defined as the minimum security standards for state-issued driver's license. The minimum. It isn't like a high level. It's not even a medium level. They're saying you need to have these minimums, verifiable facts about this human being whose picture is on the ID. So state agencies, now every state has had different abilities to verify who the person is walking up in the DMV line, right? And so in my experience, all the Get Fundable boot campers, the funding hackers, my clients that are out there, everybody's read my book. We've explored what it means to have a PBID, right? A personal borrower identity. And that personal borrower identity starts with what's possible to put on this ID, usually a state driver's license. Here's what's fascinating: that part of this is there are some very important restrictions, and the Real ID Act is asking every state to verify that your identity, the state issued driver's license, represent a residence, not a mailbox, etc., not a UPS store, not a Kinko's, not a commercial mailbox, not a PO box, but an actual residence. And some people, clients, students, or otherwise, some people have come up and said, you know what? That's a problem, because I've been at this particular commercial mailbox for years. Well, case in point, so have I. I just got, as we've discussed in previous episodes, I've actually been approved for a business line of credit and a corresponding business credit card from Wells Fargo to the tune of $75,000 between the two of them, using my commercial mailbox address. Now, I've had it for 15 years, and so I've been grandfathered in when it comes to the state driver's license and when it comes into all of my creditors. I have longevity at this address. Folks who are coming in brand new, and if you're trying to do your PBID and use a commercial mailbox or a post office box, which I totally tell you not to do, but if you try and do it, then what happens is you're brand new. And the greatest loss of dollars is not from for lenders is not bankruptcy and not default on a loan, right? Charge-offs or otherwise. It's fraud. And this fraud is what lenders are trying to stop from happening. 95 or more percent of all fraud has come or been a result of addresses using, let's say, Merrill Chandler, and I've been moved to a commercial mailbox, and then that commercial mailbox, UPS store or otherwise, they're able to make applications and get and then collect those credit cards or that and then charge things up in my name. So the bureaus over the last, as I've described before, the bureaus over the last 24 months have and underwriting software from lenders, FICO, everybody's identifying that you're using what's called a commercial mail receiving agency. Right? Commercial mail receiving agency. But those are the mailbox setters, the UPS stores, the Federal Express, etc. The Real ID Act is designed to make sure that people live somewhere so they are truly identifiable, because in the tragedies we've had in our country, numerous times, a commercial mailbox, a UPS store or otherwise, was used to establish an identity for the people who are on the 9/11 jets that totally destroyed our New York, and the Pentagon, etc. These individuals gained residency using these commercial mailboxes. So, for a political and for safety reasons, there are. For safety reasons, the Real ID Act supports the Patriot Act about having as complete of a name from your birth certificate or otherwise on your driver's license. And now they want to know that you're actually a resident somewhere, right? Now, we'll get to it in a little bit, but my own team knows that I use lots of people that I coach are like, Merrill, you share that you've been grandfathered in with it because you're getting all these high approvals from lenders by using this mail receiving agency, right? The commercial mailbox. What's going to happen with the Real ID Act? I'm like, okay, well, let's research this and let's find out. So we're going to go over some of the things, some of the requirements and some of the workarounds. Because if you like me have been using a commercial mail receiving agency, if you're using a UPS store and you're legit and you are a professional borrower, then there's no reason to upset that entire apple cart. None. And I will show you the ways that I'm doing it and the ways that are available to you. Now, the Real ID Act, and I've actually received some. Sky, you received yours, right, in the mail? So a number of people on my team, my support staff, and they've all received versions of their new identification with the gold star. And they talk about the gold star as, all right, this is these addresses are residences. Now, it can be a single family dwelling, it can be an apartment building, it can even be a commercial building if you're living there. But I believe, if I recall, in the state of Utah, it has to be zoned for residential, like lofts or something like that. So you have restaurants below and lofts above. But you're going to be recognizing it by the gold star. Now, if it doesn't have the gold star, then that is not a legitimate ID. Now, the deadline when all this has to happen is by October 1st, 2020. So as the time of this recording, we're literally 10 months away. What's going to happen, however, 9 months away? Holy man, that's a lot. So what we need to do is understand what the Real ID is and what it's not, because there are some things that people have been afraid. Well, what about this? What about that? And we're going to go through those. So the Real ID has nothing to do with voting registration or the address used for your voting registration, right? It's not about federal benefits. It's not whether you can drive a car, rent a car. You don't have to have a gold star to be able to continue to rent cars or be licensed to drive, right? Even though the driver's license is what the gold star is being put on, you don't have to drive and get the gold star. You just cannot travel by airplane without this gold star. Travel internationally or through, and we'll get into travel in just a moment. I was just going to get ahead of myself, right? You don't need national parks, social security benefits, or courts or anything. You do not have to have the star. It's about travel, not about face identification, like getting a beer at a club, right? There are no gambling, cashing of checks, things like that. You do need a real ID if you're going to fly and use your state ID, right? If you don't have a passport or another TSA approved ID, you have to have the state ID. And you also need the real ID if you're going to the NSA in Fort Meade, Maryland, or you're going to a secure federal facility, right? You do need to have that, but you don't need it if you're under 18. Children are not required to have it, and for identification purposes, as I've listed above. And if you don't even need it if you want to bring your passport, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if you don't mind using your passport, you don't even need a real ID. And so that's one of the workarounds that I'm doing, but I'll show you kind of how I do that, because I don't need to take my passport. There's what's called passport cards, and those passport cards are good to travel in the United States instead of operating from using my driver's license. All right, so let's look at kind of the states that have done this. Every state is all dialed in by have approved it, and it's ready to be effected in all states except for Oregon. They got an extension, and then there is Oklahoma, and they got an extension. So there is so those two states have a little bit of extra time, and that was passed by their like pre-existing conditions and passed by their state legislatures. But everybody else is on board. It has been enacted and approved across all boards. So now what I want to do is kind of look at what are some of the other identifications. First of all, if you're going to use your driver's license, you have to have the gold star. Now, I've not received my gold star because my address, gold star replacement driver's license, because my gold star replacement driver's license, I don't have what they are calling a legitimate address, right? But my U.S. passport uses the exact same address, but there's also on a passport, there's a background check and other things that driver's license divisions do not do. But I also have, and I recommend this, if you're going to get a passport or renew your passport, then also purchase the U.S. passport card. What was the Sky just got hers because she's leaving the country. Why are you leaving the country? No, just kidding. So what was the additional cost for the passport card? $30, $40? So I got, when I renewed my passport, I got the what they call the book, and then there's the passport card. And the passport card is the exact same size as a driver's license. And that is what I plan on using, because I do not want to use I do not want to change my ID from my driver's license, because I do not want to change my PBID address to a residence. I've established 15 years of positive identity with my address, and I'm getting very large approvals with my PBID as it exists. I don't want to mess with this. I don't want to start over. So what I plan on doing is taking that card, and the only times I fly, which is literally at least once a month, to go to events, etc., I'm going to take my passport card and submit it. Now, the other thing is there's a couple of other trusted travelers cards. There's the Global Entry, the Lexus, or the Nexus, Century, and FAST, FAST. Now, Global Entry is literally when you're coming back from a cruise or coming back into the country, they allow you to file for a Global Entry card. If you leave the country at any time, if traveling even to Mexico or Canada is a big deal for you, then get the passport card, because the passport card is okay for Canada, for Mexico, and for the Bahamas. If you're flying in or taking cruises or otherwise, the card is all you need. But having the passport, now I can go to Europe and the Far East and travel South America, Central America, anywhere I want to go. You need the actual passport. Other than it's basically anything that touches the landmass of the United States. So we have Mexico, we have Canada, and then of course the Bahamas and the Caribbean. So the other thing is, so Global Entry is something else. And the thing is I'm also on TSA Pre-Check. Now, TSA Pre-Check is a significant background check to be able to qualify you for a faster entry. But you still need, as part of my research, you still need to have the appropriate identification, either the Gold Star driver's license or your passport card or passport book, to go into TSA. So just a warning, TSA is not enough. Now, between you and me, I'm going to go into the TSA line, which means I've been approved to go through that line. I'm going to take my driver's license. Now, I'm also going to have my passport card right there available, but with after October 1st, I'm going to try it and see what happens. I'll keep you posted on what goes on. I'll do a Facebook Live or do something to tell you guys, what happened. Now, the other formal federally recognized tribal issued photo IDs. So anybody, any of our Native American families and extended families, any of federally approved or recognized tribal issue photo IDs are viable instead of getting the Gold Star. And then there are foreign government issued passports, foreign government issued diplomatic passports, etc. So all of those are all, and if you just Google transportation security information, the TSA identification requirements, you'll be able to see a lot of extensive information. So I wanted you guys to know kind of where I'm going and what it is that I'm going to do. And I've been a gate crasher before, so October 1st, the first trip after October 1st, I am going to try and use my regular state issued driver's license and have my handy passport card right there available. So guys, do not fret, do not worry. If you are at a residence, you should be in process. Most of our team, Sky, most of our team has received theirs, right? Everybody's reported that they've been receiving theirs. So if you have not received yours and you're at a residence, your identification, your driver's license represents an actual residence address, a single family home, multifamily home, duplexes, quadplexes, or an apartment building. All of those are valid residences. If you have not received it, then I wouldn't wait past April or May in order to find out what's going on. If you get it by then, or if you've already received it, you're solid. There is no as I understand it, there's no special identification. It's not a national identification card. All they're doing is making sure that there is a legitimate name and a legitimate visitable address where a human being can be contacted. That's the essence of the Real ID Act. So You guys have a spectacular rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. And take a look at the getfundablepodcast.com. We're going to have a couple of graphics in there listing these things out for your reference. Other than that, there are no visuals. This is audio only today. So it is a pleasure always being with you on the Get Fundable podcast. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you gotta tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.